in damages. And Justice Karen Clark told the jury to forget all their political views in this case, and that's the decision they've come back with. What are your thoughts about what happened here, the fact that it got to court in the first place?
Well, I think you had a plaintiff and the Hagemans who were absolutely determined to have their day, and that makes it very difficult for Little. It seemed that there was virtually nothing that he could do to avoid this going to court. They had made that decision. He was elderly, and those circumstances came into it. It seemed to be a crusade that they just weren't going to give up. That makes for, and they have the resources to pursue it, of course. That makes it a sort of a nightmare scenario for someone in his position as the defendant. It's going to go to a trial, and you saw from the statements that he made in the previous week about the apology that he tendered, the costs that he tendered, to try and sort of mitigate the position that he was in. But so it would have been apparent to him partway through that this was one of those nightmare scenarios, a plaintiff with a very, very strong sense of grievance and the means to see it through.
Mm. What are your thoughts?
Well, you can feel the relief from here in this small studio at Auckland. It must have been incredibly stressful for Andrew Little because he's got the selection on, and you could see his body language. He was almost a broken man walking out of court the other day. So for that, I'm happy for Andrew Little, but as you say, the Hagemans were keen to pursue the legacy that they wanted to leave, because he's not in very, very good health, is he? The Earl, I think it is. So, it's probably, it's lucky for Andrew Little that he's escaped this.
I think it would have been very difficult because it would have fallen on the defence of availability of qualified privilege. Was this an area where he was entitled to speak out, public interest, and did he abuse that privilege? And I think that's what the jury would have really struggled with.
What constitutes over and above qualified privilege?
Yeah, did he lose that right there? That would have been what was very hard and difficult for them.
The other element lurking in the background was the connection between Jacinda Ardern and her father being the New Zealand Commissioner to Niue, and how he actually got the information. So,
anyway, he's been cleared. Now the USS, before we go, the USS Carl Vinson, America's supercarrier, and an accompanying strike force are on their way to the Korean Peninsula because of North Korea's, quote, nuclear threat, unquote. Opinions on this?
I was in Korea in 2010 when the Cheonan got bombed. It was a patrol boat, the South Korean patrol boat, and the tension, especially at that time, is palpable. It's incredible, the tension that still exists on that Korean peninsula.
Yeah.
As far as the political moves go, as you say, the South China Sea has potential for escalation. I think it's a worry.
The way the regime's talking, the Chinese have given the green light, because US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson told Face the Nation on CBS, President Xi clearly understands and I think agrees that the situation has intensified and has reached a certain level of threat that action has to be taken. The question is, what action, James?
Well, again, to the point made earlier, I spoke to a number of lawyers who were visiting New Zealand for a conference over the weekend from Korea, and they asking them about how they felt about the situation living in South Korea, and they're extremely worried and anxious and nervous, so who knows.
And there we leave it for today. Mike, very good to have you on the panel for the first time. Come back on. Mike Rehu has been on the panel today with James Elliott. Thank you, James. Always a pleasure to see you. Thanks, everybody. We're back tomorrow, and Checkpoints with John Campbell coming up.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight on Checkpoint, the latest from the Andrew Little defamation case. Quite an extraordinary case. It's all unfolding as we speak. John Clark. He made Fred Dagg a household name. He then held a mirror up to Australia too. An extraordinary, brilliant, funny man who died in Australia yesterday. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council commissions an independent review into flooding in Edgecombe. We're there live, and we have some pretty remarkable stories from people who have lost their homes. And we speak to Erin Brockovich from the backyard of a Christchurch family who've spent the last 6 years waiting for their insurance claims to be fixed. A very special Checkpoint. Stay with us.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon, ko Katrina Bat in Aho. The government says there are fears temporary fixes to the failed stop bank in Edgecombe won't be able to withstand more bad weather later this week. The town was hit by a wall of water after the stop bank on the Rangitaiki River burst last week, forcing its 1,600 residents to flee. The local MP, Anne Tolley, who's been appointed to oversee any government assistance, says fixing the stop bank remains a high priority for the regional council.
I understand that they are working consistently to try and shore that up, but they are not 100% confident that it would withstand something of the magnitude that is being predicted.
And Tolley says water levels in Edgecombe are still thigh high, and it's unlikely residents of flooded houses will be able to return home by the end of the week. Meanwhile, hundreds of residents of North Edgecombe may be allowed to return to their homes from 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The Whakatane District Mayor, Tony Bon, says people who live on College Road north of Rata Avenue should be able to go back home. He says that area covers about 130 homes, and water, power and wastewater are due to be back on tomorrow as well. Residents of 45 properties on the east side of the Rangitaiki River were able to return home this morning. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council is commissioning an independent review of events leading up to the Edgecombe flooding. The council's chair, Doug Leader, says the inquiry will be headed up by Sir Michael Cullen. Mr Leader says the terms of reference are still to be set and the other panel members are still to be appointed. However, he hopes the review panel will be able to report back by the end of July. The late John Clarke has been hailed as one of the best satirists in the English language by a former colleague. The comedian and satirist has died in Australia at the age of 68. Clarke first starred in New Zealand as Fred Dagg, then moved to Australia where he built a stellar career in Australia and feature films. He also co-wrote the comic television series The Games with Ross Stevenson and appeared in shows such as Kath and Kim. Ross Stevenson says Clarke was in a league of his own.
He was such a genius. He knew always precisely what he wanted, precisely the way he wanted to say it. He was, for the greater part of his working life, to me, the greatest satirist in the English language. Don't worry about Australia, don't worry about New Zealand.
Ross Stevenson. Clarke died of natural causes while hiking in the Grampians in Victoria. A 9-year-old Auckland girl was offered $100 to get into a stranger's car on her way to school this morning. The police say a man approached the girl, a student at St Dominic's Catholic Primary School in Blockhouse Bay, about 8:10. They say he was standing next to a black SUV when he offered the girl the money to get into the vehicle. She refused and ran into her school, where she notified her teacher. The police say the man is Pākehā in his mid-30s with short blonde-brown curly hair. He's short, of average build, and was wearing a dark T-shirt and dark shorts. People in parts of New Caledonia have been ordered to stay inside as Cyclone Cook bears down on the territory's main island. Cook is forecast to remain a Category 3 cyclone, but the authorities warn it's still a serious threat to the islands. Flights have been cancelled and the authorities have warned people to prepare while they can. Forecasters expect the cyclone to pass 50 kilometres to the southwest of the capital, Noumea, by the morning. Winds of up to 200 kilometres an hour are expected, as well as very heavy rain and waves of up to 10 metres. The man who killed Liam Ashley in the back of a police van in 2006 is in court facing a charge of threatening to stab a prison guard. George Charlie Baker is appearing in the Auckland District Court, surrounded by 3 prison guards. The charge relates to an incident at Auckland Prison at Paremoremo in August last year, while Baker was moving cells. In opening the Crown's case, Robin McCoubrey told the court that there is no doubt Baker made the threats because the incident was recorded on a prison guard's body camera. But Animal Cresswell for the defence says she'll argue during the trial that Baker was acting in self-defence. The case is expected to last 2 days. It's 4.5 past 5. To sport, and the Spanish golfer Sergio Garcia has ended nearly 20 years of major disappointment by beating England's Justin Rose in a playoff to win the US Masters. After teeing off in 73 majors and enduring 4 heartbreaking runner-up finishes, along with plenty of self-doubt, Garcia has finally claimed his maiden major title. He beat Englishman Justin Rose on the first day of on the first playoff hole after the pair finished level at 9 under par par after 72 holes. Donning the winner's green jacket on what would have been the 60th birthday of his hero, the late Seve Ballesteros, Garcia says he was younger. Then, when he was younger, he always thought he'd win at Augusta.
I'm not going to lie, that thought kind of changed a little bit through the years because I started feeling uncomfortable in the course, but I kind of came in peace with it the last 3 or 4 years, and I accepted what Augusta gives and takes, and I think because of that, I'm able to stand here today.
US Masters winner Sergio Garcia. The Australian Rugby Union has confirmed either the Western Force or Melbourne Rebels will be axed from Super Rugby next season as Australia reduces its teams from 5 to 4. The decision over which team will be culled will be announced within the next 3 days. A late pit stop has cost the New Zealand motor racing driver Scott Dixon victory in the second round of the IndyCar Series in California. Dixon, who started second on the grid, led for much of the Long Beach Grand Prix, but the late pit stop meant he finished fourth. That's the news.
Assessing the damage.
Unfortunately, each came as a bomb. You know, it's good to get in. Now the family can smile a little, you know, they've got their belongings.
The battle against P.
The taniwha that's destroying our communities, it's not a race thing, but certainly in our Māori community, it's destroying them. It's quite rampant here in Hawke's Bay.
Schools at breaking point.
Principals have been assaulted, punched, kicked in the private parts. A teacher who was poked in the eye with a pencil who needed medical attention.
Morning Report with Guy and Espiner and Susie Ferguson, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, accusations older people are being hurt by moves to keep them out of care for as long as possible. And after 10, reformed neo-Nazi Christian Picciolini, who's made it his life's mission to help others escape white supremacist groups. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to tomorrow midnight. Northland to Taranaki, cloudy periods with isolated showers. Showers becoming more frequent later tomorrow about Northland and Auckland, especially in the east. Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupō, a few showers turning to rain tomorrow evening. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few showers mainly north of Napier, otherwise fine. Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa, fine today, becoming cloudy tomorrow, with a few spots of evening rain from Kapiti southwards. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine today, cloud increasing tomorrow and scattered rain developing. Bulletu for Fiordland, occasional rain south of Hokitika today, otherwise fine. Rain spreading elsewhere tomorrow with some heavy falls possible at night. Otago and Southland, high cloud increasing today and scattered light rain developing. The Chatham Islands mostly cloudy with the odd shower. It's just gone 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Yeah, g'day Bruce. How you doing? Yeah. Look, could you put a call through to the Prime Minister, please? Wellington, I think. Yeah, I know it's a toll call, Bruce. That's why I rang you up. You're a tolls operator. Yeah. Muldoon, I think.
Kia ora everyone and welcome to Checkpoint. That was, of course, John Clark. Just before we go on tonight, if you have Sky TV, we're on it. This is a first for us and for RNZ. You can now watch us on Face TV, that's Sky Channel 83. We're also on Freeview Channel 50, Facebook, the RNZ website and the radio, as we have always been. Coming up, Andrew Little cleared in the Hagerman defamation suit, Edgecombe and the latest from there, including some pretty remarkable stories. More bad weather coming, I'm sorry to say, and much of the worst of it is going to the areas so hard hit over this week or two, and we have much more tonight. But we begin with John Clark, who gave us Fred Dagg and more, and who gave the Australians a more nuanced satire and held mirrors up to both nations and said, look, you silly buggers, this is how you are. He died yesterday, it was announced today, while hiking in the Grampians National Park in Victoria. He was a brilliantly funny man and a loved one too, and he was part of the birth of something in New Zealand. Later, we'll be joined by Jeff Murphy, another man who was there at the time. But first, here's our reporter, Robin Martin.
Righto, kick it in the guts, Trev.
Gumboots, they are wonderful. Gumboots, they are swell.
A man of many talents, Clark was a comedian, actor and writer of television, film and stage musicals. But for thousands of New Zealanders, he will always be the laconic farmer, Fred Dagg. His alter ego made his first appearance in 1973, and before long, the black singlet-clad, gumboot-wearing father of 7 boys, all called Trev, became a cultural icon.
I run the place with my sons.
of whom there are approximately half a dozen. Trevor here, he's the firstborn, and he's the eldest as a result of that. And he's a little thick, actually, is Trevor, but a very, very valuable man indeed with cows.
Fellow comedian and good friend Tom Scott says Clark's death comes as a terrible shock.
Yeah, I was going to catch up with him on the weekend, and I saw him. I had dinner with him a couple of months ago in Australia, and he was as funny and as kind and as wise as always. So it's a shock, terrible shock. And he was quite fit too. He did a lot of swimming.
Scott says Clark had an amazing comedic timing.
He'd appear on stage at shows at downstage, and John would just walk out with a can of beer. He'd sit down, he'd take a suck on a cigarette, and he'd look at the audience for a while and go, "Story." And honestly, you'd bring the house down. He just had to say one word, and we were in the palm of his hand.
Clark left New Zealand for Australia, and he went on to become a firm favourite across the ditch. He developed a regular political satire slot on A Current Affair, and for 27 years he appeared on the ABC, conducting mock interviews and skewering politicians with his comedy partner, Brian Dorr.
Scott Morrison, thanks for your time.
Good to be with you, Brian. Good evening.
I know you don't worry too much about the polls, but you are falling behind.
We don't worry too much about the polls, Brian, but I would expect the polls to improve anyway as these new proposed company tax cuts kick in.
Yeah, no, I read this week that the company tax cuts have passed this pub test.
Oh, yes, a ringing endorsement this week in the pub test, Brian.
How do you determine what passes the pub test?
Well, Malcolm Turnbull and I went to a pub, Brian, and we sought people's views. We said, what is your view of these proposed company tax cuts?
Who'd you ask?
Myself personally?
Yeah.
I asked Malcolm, Brian.
And who did Malcolm ask?
He asked me.
Clark also co-wrote with Ross Stevenson the multi-award-winning mockumentary The Games about the Sydney Organising Committee for the Olympic Games, which aired in 1999 and 2000.
Hey, Mr Wilson, have you measured the 100 metres track?
Yes, of course.
Well, let me ask you, how long is it?
How long is the 100 metres track?
Yes.
It's a 100 metres track.
Yeah, I know what it is, Mr Wilson. I'm asking you how long it is.
It's about 100 metres.
It's about 100 metres long.
Yes.
How long should it be, Mr Wilson?
That's about the length it should be.
Yeah, about 100 metres long. Is the 200 metres track about 200 metres long?
Well, the 200 metres track is different.
Isn't it twice as long as the 100 metres?
Well, the 200 is different.
So, no, you've lost us, Mr Wilson.
Well, the 200 metres track is part of the 400 metres track.
Stevenson says it's a sad day for both Australia and New Zealand.
I imagine it's sombre in your country, and it's certainly sombre in ours, particularly in the city of Melbourne, which you love very much. And I was just thinking to myself that that famous scene from the Games should lead us to conclude that John Clark died aged about 68.
Stevenson says Clark was unrivalled in the English-speaking world.
He was such a genius. He knew always precisely what he wanted, precisely the way that he wanted to say it. He was, in my view, for the greater part of his working life, to me, the greatest satirist in the English language. Oh. Don't worry about Australia. Don't worry about New Zealand.
And now the delegate from New Zealand, Mr. Fred Dagg.
John Clark is survived by his wife Helen and daughters Lauren and Lucia. For Checkpoint, ko Robin Martin Tene.
And later on Checkpoint, we will speak to a man whose career began at a very similar time to John Clark's, Jeff Murphy. He'll be our guest later in the program. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council announced this afternoon it will commission an independent review into the flooding in Edgecombe last Thursday. The review will be led by Sir Michael Cullen. While some residents were allowed back to their homes for the first time today to briefly collect possessions, most remain displaced behind the cordons, uncertain about when or, in some cases, if they will be able to return. Let's go now live to the Bay of Plenty to our reporter Zach Fleming, who's joining us on Live View. Zach, where are you tonight?
I'm at the Ruatahi Marae in Kawara, which has essentially become a one-stop shop for Edgecombe residents, Edgecombe evacuees. Nearly 500 people have walked through here since Thursday and received some form of help. There are work and income representatives from the council. They're offering people free clothes, free food. You can have your meals here if you want. There's also free medical assistance, and for those most affected who have nowhere else to go, you can also sleep here at the marae. But to put that 500 people helped into perspective, 1,600 people were evacuated from Edgecombe in these floods. So this marae has helped nearly a third of the entire town. They're getting ready for a dinner here tonight behind me. They're having a barbecue, and around 50 or so people are expected.
So those people who are still out of their homes and have no idea when they will be able to go back, who may, for example, be sleeping at the marae behind you there, do you know when those whose homes have been most damaged will be able to start returning?
No, so the common theme is essentially that nobody knows. So you will probably remember on Thursday they said it might be 2 to 3 days. Then on Friday they said it would be 1 to 2 weeks, and they're kind of sticking with that estimate at the moment of around about 2 weeks. But the people I spoke to today really had no faith in that estimate. I met one woman who, her name is Ursula Mayo. She's lived in Edgecombe for 45 years, and she's almost resigned herself to the fact that not only will she never be able to live in her home again, she might actually never be able to step foot in it again. The floodwaters hit her house so quickly on Thursday that she didn't even have time to get her keys.
I was sitting having my breakfast. I heard evacuate over the phone, over the radio. So I immediately went and got out of my pyjamas, put my clothes on, and put the lead on my little dog. Looked out the window and the water was pouring down both sides of my house, and it was probably 2 feet deep then, and it was.
And this happened in how long?
Rising. 10 minutes or less. I was out of the house in 10 minutes, and it was just chaotic. You couldn't. It was so swift. There was no way you could stand up. It was just unbelievable, and I've lived there all my life, really, in the area all my life. Born there, and I've never ever seen anything like it. I think it's worse. I think it's worse than the earthquake that we had 30 years ago.
So you've lived in Edgecombe through the earthquake, through previous floods.
Yes.
Do you think you'll stay for this as well?
Well, I know my house is totaled. My house is gone, literally. So probably not. I don't know yet. I've only just found out today that my house is gone.
How did you find that out?
When we went to try and get in, check with the fire brigade to see if we could get in, and we were not allowed, so we haven't been into the house yet. So I've got nothing out of it. Nothing. Everything's there.
When you say it's a no-go, the firemen took some photos for you. Describe to me what it looks like.
Oh, it's terrible. There's bricks have come off the side of the house. The carport's gone from the back. There's a huge 5-metre trench behind it. Everything out of the backyard's gone. The fence between us and our neighbours is gone on one side. It's everything, really. Just the car shed's totaled. From what I can see on the photo, the deep freeze that was full of a home kill is tipped up. So, and my car's in the shed. So, so everything. Everything's gone.
That trench that runs behind your house, is that kind of where the water ran, perhaps, and it's just cut through the earth?
No, it's come straight through through the house on College Road, straight through to me. Bought the fence with it. And the trench appears to be. I've never seen anything like it. It's huge and it's deep. It's like a great big drain with a big bank on it. It's just awful.
You spoke to me about the outside of your house, what it looks like. Bricks have come away and whatnot. But what about your house itself?
Oh, it's almost broken in half. It's just awful. Porch is gone. My deck is there.
Whoever built your deck deserves a pat on the back, perhaps.
Yeah, that's there, but that was on the front of the house, and I suppose it would have been protected by the house. It would have, the force of the water would have been going either side of it, I would think. And the house was actually was on piles, but it was also on a concrete base. So not a concrete floor, just a concrete base. So that would have been protected a wee bit too. But it doesn't matter now. I mean, it won't be going back there.
So, Ursula, what's next for you? You said you perhaps might not stay in Edgecombe, but as far as insurance goes, do you have insurance?
I am insured, yeah. I am house and contents and car. It's a bit of a shock. You always think that you can get back. I'd sort of looked at photos of it and, okay, you could see that it was bad, but I didn't realise how bad until I saw the pictures today. I mean, you always think, well, you know, it mightn't be so bad, maybe I can, you know, I'd just like to get some clothes and medication, you know, that sort of stuff. You know, in a case like this, everybody helps everybody else, and yeah, it'll go on for a long time. But yeah, I expect that our house will eventually be demolished. Who knows? I've just got some good, nice stuff in there, a lot of memories there. You know.
How long have you lived there for?
45 years. Yeah, and I mean, my family have grown up there and gone to school there, and I mean, I was born in the area, so I've really been there all my life.
It's not just like a physical house, it's actually a home.
Yeah, it is a home, and I mean, my family come home, and my grandies come home, and I look after the dogs now and again. As a mate for my dog. Yeah, so it is a home. It is a home, and it's Nana's house.
It's Ursula Mayo speaking with our reporter Zach Fleming. 4 decades. Later in the program, we'll hear from the Met Services' Georgina Griffiths about more very bad weather heading our way this weekend. And I'm very sorry to say it seems to be heading for many of the same areas that have just been flooded. Georgina Griffiths with us latest. Let's go live to Wellington now, where there has been a verdict of sorts, somewhat confusing, in the Hageman defamation trial. This is Andrew Little, who made comments about Earl and Lani Hageman, a donation they made to the National Party. They'd also won work to build a scenic hotel in Niue. Jane Patterson, our political editor, is standing by. Jane, if I understand correctly, the jury was able to agree on Lani Hageman, but not able to agree on Earl Hageman. Is that the case?
That's right, John, and Justice Clark described it as an elusive outcome, which it certainly is. So the jury found that all of the statements relating to Lani Hageman were not defamatory. They threw out all of those particular matters. But it's a lot more tricky when it comes to Earl Hageman, and they had a variety of findings, and I'll just go through them. They could not reach majority agreement regarding the meaning of words in 4 of the statements he made, so even a majority jury, that is 3/4 of the jury, could not reach a decision in that. One of the statements Mr Little made was found not to be defamatory, but there was one statement they did find to be defamatory, but they did not go on to find damages or award damages, because they also could not agree on whether qualified privilege applied in this case, and that's basically the defence that Andrew Little could use to get off that one defamatory statement.
This has been a very complex case, isn't it? Because Andrew Little maintained that he had tried to do the right thing, having done the wrong thing in the first instance, and that he had been unable to. So where to now? Is there any sense of what happens next?
So the only thing we know now is that Justice Clark has called the parties back to chambers. We don't have a date yet for that, basically to discuss where now to go. So the options are that Lani Hageman could drop the case and Earl Hageman altogether. The parties could settle, or it could go back to trial to once again hear those issues relating to the statements for Earl Hageman. Now, Lani Hageman did make a brief comment. She basically read a statement out after court. She said that people facing defamation are guilty until they can prove themselves innocent, and she thanked the people that had supported her through this. I asked her at the end what she intended to do. She said that still had to be considered. So really, this all still up in the air for Andrew Little.
Jane Patterson, our political editor, live from Wellington. Thanks, Jane. 6 years sleeping in their living room for fear of the foundations collapsing in the master bedroom. Had a visit from Erin Brockovich this afternoon. The consumer rights advocate was brought to New Zealand by Christchurch law firm Shine Lawyers to meet families still fighting to have their insurance claims settled or their earthquake damaged homes repaired. Among them, Ian and Marama Malza, whose Mairiho home was severely damaged in the 2011 quakes, particularly the foundations. In a moment, we speak with Erin Brockovich herself, but first, Ian Malzard himself on his home and the damage it suffered, and trying to settle insurance claims 6 years on.
Well, it's just, when you ring up the insurance company, they say to you it's nothing to do with them, it's got to go to EQC. So you ring EQC and they say, oh no, it's the insurance company's fault. You get ring them back and say, tell them that EQC told him to go to the insurance company, and then they say, no, it's got to do with EQC. And we just don't get any results. It's taken its toll on my marriage. You know, the health is not the best. You know, we sleep in the lounge because we're too scared to sleep in our $4,000 bed because the floorboards are collapsing. There's nothing underneath it to hold the floorboards up. It's deadly, you know. All we want is our house back the way it was when we bought it in 2005. We're not asking for millions of dollars. We just want it back the way it was. It had just been renovated in 2005.
You're exhausted. 6 years. 6 years of this. You are utterly exhausted by it, aren't you?
Yeah, it's, they take the chimneys out. We had 2 fireplaces. They took the chimneys out and all they did was stick a board over it. In winter time it gets cold, really, really cold. We've got 2 heat pumps, but the point is, it's so expensive to run those heat pumps. And I'm not working, so it's only one income. It's just too much.
How's your wife, Marama?
Nervous wreck. The strain is just too much for us. We need a holiday.
Ian Melzard speaking to us earlier. Erin Brockovich went to visit Ian and Marama today. A reminder of what can happen if you don't give up. Her story is famous, of course, immortalised in the film that bears her name, with Julia Roberts playing her in an Academy Award-winning performance. Since that film, which dramatises her real-life victory over the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, who had willfully concealed the fact they had contaminated a community's groundwater with a carcinogen, Erin Brockovich has spoken to communities, individuals, anyone really, pitted against corporate or political might, and her message has a central thesis: if you are right and they are wrong, don't give up, even 6 years after the earthquake that damaged your home. I spoke to her from Ian and Marama's backyard.
I live in Los Angeles, so we're not strangers to earthquakes. I've been through several earthquakes, the '94 earthquake. And to come here and hear 6 years on, you still have families like this, and not 1 and not 100 and not 500, but 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000, 8,000 to 10,000, where these claims have not been resolved, is amazing to me. The unnecessary delays to dragging this on and dragging this out for thousands of people, for the insurance companies, to save another buck. And that's, for me, my frustration. In 22 years of doing this, it's always about the almighty dollar, and frankly, to the hell with the people. And it's wrong, and it's gone on too long, and it's really a source, for me, of something that should be pride to this country, and pride to your government, and to insurance companies to step up and do the right thing, and do their job. Let's get on with this. Get in here and do what you have to do for these homes. Don't try to cheat the people, and let's move on and make Christchurch great, just like it's supposed to be.
How do you achieve that if you don't have your tenacity, your singularity, your will? Because the situations that you so often visit now are about a disproportionality of power. So it's a corporation, it's an insurer, it's the government against an individual. And if you look at Ian and Marama, who you were visiting there, they are shattered. They are completely exhausted 6 years on. What do they do to win?
I would be too, and I do have that tenacity, and I will tell you, most people do. I grew up with having a lot of, things to overcome. My mom always told me to have stick-to-itiveness, and a simple word changed my life. And its definition is propensity to follow through in a determined manner and dogged persistence born of obligation and stubbornness. These people are just that. This is their home. And life requires that you have stick-to-itiveness, and they cannot give up. And if they have a moment to speak with you, to validate what they're going through, to have some recourse to the law, they'll find the strength again. This is their home. This is all they have. Their home and their health. And they need to have the strength and sometimes a motivational talk and the fortitude to continue on. Now, I'm telling you, they're feeling tired, but I'm telling you, they're going to go on. This is why I tell people, Superman's not coming, so tag your it. Get busy as a consumer, educating yourself, informing yourself, and becoming empowered by that and standing up for yourself. When we do it collectively and we make that pushback, you can see change.
You say Superman's not coming. And I want to pick up on that line. Did you understand that when you began your famous battle? Did you realise that Superman wasn't coming and that you had to be Superman or Superwoman? What was it that made you understand it had to be you?
Because I grew up with a learning disability known as dyslexia. And it always bothered me that people put me in a box and would decide for me, this is what I saw, this is how I acted, and this is what I needed to do. And I learned early on that inside myself I had a voice, that somebody else could have a perception of me, but it didn't have to be the perception I had. And I could choose to come out and speak up and speak out. And it was that very sense of wanting to control and confine me when I was in Hinckley that set me off into motion. Because everyone would say to me, and they'd try to convince me, that the two-headed frogs and the green water I saw wasn't real. So this is where I call BS. And they want to, the insurance companies here want to convince these people that their house listing to the left isn't real. They want to convince them that all the door jambs that are going like this isn't real. They want to convince them that they're the ones that are off kilter, when that's in fact not what's happening. But they need to learn to trust what they see and not be convinced by what they're told. And that is a process that is learned, and I learned it very early on. And when I was out in Hinckley looking at all of this, and I would have experts or PG&E experts say to me, you're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not a scientist, you're not a politician, so why should we hear what you have to say? And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I go, you've got to be kidding me. I don't have to be any of that to be a human being. And to stand here today and tell you I trust what I see, and those two-headed frogs and that green water and this destruction is not right. And you'll never convince me otherwise. And they too have to learn that for themselves. They're here, they see it, they know it. Now they need to trust it, they need to get behind that, and they need to stand their ground with that. It's pretty obvious to me, to the homes that I've been at, that there are foundational issues, that these people are just sitting here waiting for the next disaster, and these companies are not doing anything to engage and move this process along faster. This should have been done. Shame on them. They're dragging their feet for the almighty buck, and I'm hoping to heck these people stand up and they start fighting back.
Erin Brockovich speaking from Christchurch early this afternoon. It's 26 minutes to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. Coming up, Cyclone Cook, due to arrive in time for Easter with more heavy rain for the Bay of Plenty, also parts of Taranaki and also parts of the South Island. It's going back to many of the areas that have been so waterlogged over the past week. The government offers to bring home the bodies of soldiers killed overseas and buried in Singapore and Malaysia between 1955 and 1971, and much more. But before anything else, Katrina Batten with the headlines.
The opposition leader Andrew Little has been cleared of defaming the part owner of Scenic Hotel Group, Lani Hageman. However, the jury has been unable to reach a decision about her husband, Earl Hageman. The government says there are fears temporary fixes to the failed stop bank in Edgecombe won't be able to withstand more bad weather later this week. It says fixing the stop bank remains a high priority. While hundreds of residents of North Edgecombe may be allowed to return to their homes from 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, others are unlikely to be allowed back by the end of the week. The Bay of Plenty Regional Council has ordered an independent review of events leading up to the Edgecombe flooding. It'll be led by Sir Michael Cullen and is expected to report back by the end of July. The late John Clarke has been hailed by his friend and colleague Ross Stevenson as one of the best satirists in the English language and in a league of his own. The 68-year-old comedian and satirist died of natural causes while hiking in the Grampians in Victoria. Clarke first starred in New Zealand as Fred Dagg, then moved to Australia where he built a stellar career in television and feature films. A 9-year-old Auckland girl was offered $100 to get into a stranger's car on her way to school this morning. The police say a man approached the girl from St Dominic's Catholic Primary School in Blockhouse Bay about 8:10. She refused and ran into the school where she notified her teacher. The police say the man is Pākehā in his mid-30s with short blonde-brown curly hair. He's short, of average build, and was wearing a dark T-shirt and dark shorts. The man who killed Liam Ashley in the back of a police van in 2006 is in court charged with threatening to stab a prison guard. In opening the Crown's case, Robin McCoubrey says there's no doubt George Charlie Baker made threats because these were recorded on a prison guard's body camera. But the defence will argue that Baker was acting in self-defence. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Let's turn to business news now. Jonathan Mitchell this week joining us from Wellington. Jonathan, hello. The Stock Exchange has a new head. And who is it? And what are some of his early challenges?
It's Mark Peterson. Good evening, John. Yes, he's been acting in that role since the start of the year when he replaced Tim Bennett. One of the early mandates that Mr Peterson might want to tackle and face is the actual ability to attract companies to list here and stay here in New Zealand. Last year there were just 3 new listings, and the small incubator, that's the next market, is still pretty much that small fry. Some of the main reasons companies are looking away from New Zealand, they're choosing to sell privately, they're looking to raise money by crowdfunding, or they're actually looking entirely overseas in markets like the ASX 200. And there's been several examples recently, and one of the key ones was the Christchurch-based technology investor Powerhouse. Their main reason for listing on the ASX was that they thought there was more enthusiasm about the company over in Australia and their ability to get more money. We've then had Michael Hill Jeweller, a long-standing New Zealand company. Their primary listing is now on the ASX. And then down south there's the agriculture firm CropLogic. They're looking at getting on the ASX by the end of the year. So it appears scale and money are the draw cards for Australia. Then on top of that for New Zealand, they've had some companies fall off the local index. Hallaby Holdings at the start of the year, they were bought out by Australians. Then there were company failures, Pumpkin Patch, Wynyard Group on top of that. And then there was a story we did earlier in the year about some current companies listed in New Zealand actually questioning why they're still listed and whether it would be better to move away. Some of the reasons behind that were a lack of research and actual support given to small companies. Back when we did that story, there was calls to start a task force to look into this problem, but actually for Mark Peterson, the new head of the NZX, he may want to tackle this first off the bat for his new role, his permanent position as chief executive, to see and attract companies to stay here and prevent them from looking overseas.
Speaking of the NZX, what happened on the New Zealand share market today?
Fairly steady today here on the local exchange. It was down a handful of points to 7,239. The dollar is still hovering under 70 US cents, currently trading at 69.4 US cents and 92.7 Australian. John.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Mitchell, joining us live from Wellington. Let's head back to Edgecombe now, because the bad weather is more bad weather is on the way, with Cyclone Cook making its way to New Zealand in time for Easter. Unfortunately, it does look like it's targeting many of the areas that have had such heavy rain in the past week or so. Georgina Griffiths is a Met Service forecaster. She's fantastic at it. I asked her what we can expect over the next few days.
Well, we've got two weather systems that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on. Another Tasman sea low, John, and it's running into another blocking high that's going to make it a really slow-moving rain band again. And those areas that are going to get the wettest are those north-facing areas of both islands, previously been wet. So it's going to target the same already soggy areas.
So are we talking Bay of Plenty?
Yeah, in the most... the area that's probably going to get most hammered in the coming few days from that Tasman sea low, Bay of Plenty, maybe up to 200 millimetres in 48 hours towards the end of the week from a Tasman sea low. But of course, anywhere in the upper north of both islands is going to be wet.
So this is an echo almost of what we've just had.
Yeah, repeat pattern. This must be the fourth or fifth we've had in 5 weeks. So, you know, Mother Nature is not playing nice, John. She's just going, let's have lows in the Tasman. Let's really get bursts of heavy rain into those upper North Island and the north of the South Island. So it's repeat pattern all over again.
Which suggests that something is changing, right? Because people were describing the Edgecombe flooding as 1 in 500 year events, and here we are having something similar to it a week or two later.
I mean, the atmosphere, the weather maps do get into sort of cycles like this to do with the jet stream or what's happening over the Southern Ocean. This one's been, you know, quite long-winded. All of March was very wet for a lot of the North Island and upper south, and we've already in April had downpour and heavy bursts of heavy rain in the areas that least need it. Looking forward though, I mean, the big concern for Bay of Plenty towards the end of the week is Tropical Cyclone Cook and what happens with that. And at this stage it is going to go close to East Cape, and it is going to probably target that north and east North Island, so places like the Bay of Plenty, potentially Gisborne. Really looks like it's heading towards the Bay of Plenty, the current guidance though, John.
With heavy rain.
Yes, and so Met Service will inherit Tropical Cyclone Cook from Fiji Met Service around midnight Tuesday or in the early hours of Wednesday morning. And that's when the expert tropical meteorologists are going to really earn their money. They'll start looking at track, timing and where the worst of the rain will be. And obviously Met Service is the alerting authority for this tropical cyclone. Yet there's a lot of misinformation, John, so I think we need to say, check in with Met Service on Wednesday morning, find out what we're saying for the Bay of Plenty in particular, but also for North and Coromandel and also Gisborne Hawke's Bay. How far is that rain expected to come south? How heavy will it be? What are our severe weather warnings and watches in place?
Okay, so the severe weather warnings will become meaningful Wednesday,
tomorrow,
Thursday?
So we've already got a watch and play.
Yep.
Places like Westland, Buller and Northwest Nelson for rain from the Tasman low for tomorrow.
So that's the South Island?
Yes, and then we've got Taranaki and Bay of Plenty already on watch for a mixture of both, two systems.
So the weather
Tasman
is,
low,
so it's hitting
Tasman
Taranaki
Cook.
and, okay.
So these are rain to near or approaching or likely to exceed warning criteria. But the rest of the upper North Island, most of us are going to have a drink. We're going to see rain this week again. You know, how wet's it been for the upper North Island, John? You know, we've had rain on the back of rain, have 3 months worth of rainfall in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
It's not ideal.
And my recollection isn't great, but my sense is that autumn isn't typically that wet here, is it?
Autumn's a little bit bipolar. It can go two ways.
Okay.
So we have these nice, long, settled autumns where, you know, the leaves are beautiful and we all get outside and enjoy those chilly mornings but lovely afternoons. And then you get the feral ones like the one we're having in 2017.
Is this climate change? I know that's not your department because your business is what... Yeah, exactly, what's happening this week. But are we going to see more of this as a result of climate change?
Well, certainly, you know, the people... let's talk about Auckland and those downpours, okay? How humid was it on that Sunday before Newland, you know, the New North Road area?
Mad.
Really humid. It felt like we were in a sauna. Everyone's hair was sticking on end and just felt like we were in Fiji. In a warmer world, you know, assuming the climate change thing would get warmer, you can also squeeze that moisture out more. Okay, so when you've got humidity and you do have a lower front or a thunderstorm to squeeze it, you can get those high intensity rainfalls. That is the way what climate change looks like. It certainly reeks of climate change. And concerningly, you know, we've had 3 in a week early in March. We've got another heavy rain event, probably potential burst of downpour again for the upper North Island. You know, Mother Nature is not playing nicely for the upper North, in particular the Bay of Plenty. So it does have that flavour, doesn't it?
It sure does. And worryingly, what we're seeing now is just rain on rain on rain. So the ground is still sodden, people aren't back in their homes yet, there's still flood damage to be cleaned up, and we may be getting more.
Yes, so the fact is we actually won't need as much rain as we normally would to flood in anywhere in the upper North, and that's the bottom line. We're going into a winter, which is the
North Island's wettest season, not well placed because we're already super saturated for most of the upper north, and of course the Bay of Plenty particularly so, and looking at some really large rainfall accumulations to come by the end of the week. So the bottom line for people in the North Island, also the north of the south, is to keep up with the Met Service information. We're on social media, of course. We do a lot of interview like this to try and get the message out and really check in around Tropical Cyclone Cook and what she's expected to do, because it does matter. And, you know, there's a lot of online or social misinformation floating around. You know, let's leave it to the people, the experts in New Zealand who do this every day, not the uninformed commentator, eh? Alrighty.
That's Georgina Griffiths from the Met Service. 3 education support workers for children with learning difficulties today launched New Zealand's first ever mediation for pay equity. The women say their work has long been underpaid, but principals agreed to last year after Christine Bartlett, of course, won the right for such cases to be heard, have now made mediation possible. Eric Frickberg reports.
It's a glorious day for equal pay. It's a glorious day for equal pay.
Supporters chanted as they accompanied Kathy Power, Mary Jones and Jacqueline Brink to an historic employment mediation in Wellington this morning.
Glorious day for equal pay.
The women are employed by the Ministry of Education to assist teachers who have special needs children in their classrooms. They include those with autism, as well as behavioural problems and medical conditions. Jacqueline Brink says the work is very hard.
Situations can change quickly, from calm to stormy within a couple of seconds, and you need to know the procedures. But in the end, it's all about helping that child to have a normal life.
Another support worker, Kathy Power, says this kind of job has been traditionally seen as women's work and hasn't been paid as well as so-called men's work.
Their rate starts at $16 up to $19, but it's still not the living wage. The living wage is going up in July to $20.20, so it's pretty poor. There's a perception that we're women are the nurturers.
The Joint Working Group on Pay Equity, which includes unions and employers, last year recommended guidelines that would make it easier for women to file pay equity claims by allowing them to negotiate directly with their employers rather than going through the courts. The working group was set up after a rest home worker, Christine Bartlett, won a court battle where she argued that her $14.32 hourly rate was the result of gender discrimination. Christine Bartlett is thrilled that her legal fight has helped make progress on this issue.
You know, it's a long time coming for all of us, isn't it? It has been a long battle, and it's good to hear something positive coming out of it all. I just hope that it goes their way and they win what they deserve.
Supporting the women today was a high-ranking union official from overseas, Sharon Burrow. The former president of the Australian Council of Trade Unions is currently the General Secretary of the Brussels-based International Trade Union Confederation.
This is one of the most significant battles we can have. A victory here will add to the inspiration and the momentum for victory everywhere. It is 2017. It's time that the discrimination against women about their work, about the value of their work, it's time it was simply ended.
There are signs of further developments in the wings, with legislation being prepared to amend the Equal Pay Act and the Employment Relations Act later this year. The education support workers are hoping that they, and others like them, will then get the pay equity they deserve.
It's a glorious day for equal pay.
For Checkpoint, call Eric Frickberg, 10A.
It's coming up to 11 minutes to 6. Lots of people texting and corresponding to say they are watching us on Sky. That is Face TV, Sky Channel 83. Thank you for being with us, however you have joined us. In an about turn, the government has offered to bring home the bodies of soldiers killed overseas and buried in Singapore and Malaysia between 1955 and 1971. The announcement that up to 36 personnel and their dependents could be repatriated comes after a long battle by the families who begged the government to bring their remains back. Here's our political reporter, Craig McCulloch.
For decades, the government has refused the repatriation of soldiers killed across Southeast Asia between 1955 and 71. As recently as last year, John Key ruled it out, saying it was too complex to bring them home. But today, a change of heart and an apology from the Veteran Affairs Minister, David Bennett.
We're sorry for any families that have been through this process, and we're righting a wrong now and making it possible for them to have their loved ones back home.
Angela Hayden's father, Hoani Hapeta, died in Thailand in 1969 and was buried in Malaysia when she was just 2 years old. She says her mother never had the chance to grieve.
So for us, it's going to be just great for her to be able to have that closure, and for my brothers and I to also have that closure. My brothers never got over the shock of him dying, and to not have his body brought back to New Zealand at the time has been something that they've been angry about the rest of their lives. So I know that this is going to be something that'll be an opportunity for us to come together as a family and grieve.
But she wants to know why it's going to take so long. The government has set down a year for discussion and planning with the families before the bodies begin to be brought home.
My mother's really frail now, and I don't know how much time she's got left. So it'd be really nice for her to be buried with Dad, so the sooner the better.
Paul Thomas's brother Adrian was killed some 6 decades ago while fighting with his SAS unit in Malaya. He was buried in Kuala Lumpur. In 2014, Mr. Thomas co-founded a group, Families of the Forgotten Fallen, to lobby for their return.
I'm probably feeling more angry than happy at the moment because it's taken so long. That's all we've waited 60 years for, just for one person to say yes.
And he isn't happy about how he found out.
It's deplorable that such an important decision is just flicked out over the media and you know, we weren't given the opportunity to be part of that.
The government says it didn't inform the families first due to the difficulty of contacting them all. It set aside up to $200,000 for each repatriation and will consider extending the offer to those buried in other countries over the same period. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Craig McCulloch.
The Egyptian president has declared a 3-month state of emergency throughout the country after more than 40 people were killed in 2 bomb attacks on Coptic churches. Islamic State says it was behind the blasts which targeted Palm Sunday worshippers. This report from the BBC's Yolanda Nell.
The first deadly explosion was during Mass at St George's Church in Tanta, leaving blood everywhere. Wooden pews shattered. Just hours later, there was another attack in the northern city of Alexandria, this time just outside the church. The dead include police officers who'd stopped the suicide bomber from entering. The head of Egypt's Coptic church, Pope Tawadros, had already left. In Rome, at Palm Sunday prayers, Pope Francis condemned the bombings. He's due to visit Egypt later this month. A recent upsurge in attacks on Egypt's Copts is causing concern. They're one of the world's oldest Christian communities and make up 1 in 10 of the country's mainly Muslim population. In February, hundreds fled the Sinai region following a threat from the so-called Islamic State group, which also claimed the latest bombings. And in December, nearly 30 were killed in this church explosion in Cairo. Coptic leaders say Christians feel increasingly threatened.
I'm very blessed to be part of a church that has faced discrimination systematically for decades. And the response to that has always been quite gracious, non-retaliatory, non-violent, and I pray that this continues, because if we get into a spiral of violence, more and more people get hurt.
Egypt's government says the latest attacks are another failed attempt to destroy national unity by stirring up religious tensions. But Coptic Christians, grieving once again, say much more needs to be done to make them feel safe in their own country.
We head now to Birmingham, where a far-right protest march against immigration has produced one of those photos that somehow says something much bigger than the moment itself. It was taken by a PA photographer, Joe Giddens, and it shows the head of the English Defence League, a far-right Islamophobic anti-immigration group broadly in the mould of the National Front. He looks angry, coiled, enraged, and the young woman he's facing is smiling at him with a look somewhere between bewilderment and serene contempt. He's white, she's Asian, both are English, but she's actually from Birmingham, and he's just coming for the day. The past versus the future, one journalist put it. It got tweeted and retweeted. Piers Morgan joined in, and now it's gone, and that much overused phrase, totally global. But Sophia Khan herself, or Saf, as people call her, said she just wanted to help another person out, a woman in a headscarf or a hijab who shouted racists at the EDL protesters and suddenly found herself surrounded by them.
And within about a few seconds, bunch of some really big lads had run over, and and she was quite a small woman. I think she was just with one other woman, and it wasn't, if I was in her position, I wouldn't be comfortable. So I gave it a few minutes to see what the police were doing. The police couldn't respond very quickly. I can understand why as well, because it'd been quite calm up until that point. And when I realised that nothing was getting done and she was being surrounded like 360, that's when I came in as well.
So you wandered over just to intervene on her behalf. Did you say anything to Ian Crossland or any member of the EDL, or did you just sort of stand there and watch them?
Ian Crossland, so she was calling them racists, and I have to agree with that. And at the time, I couldn't physically get to her. So the nearest I could do was verbally agree with her. So I was saying, yeah, you're racist, get off our streets.
And the photo shows Ian Crossland just eyeballing you. Was he saying anything to you?
Yeah, well, there's actually a picture which is taken immediately afterwards of his finger in my face, and my hand's still in my pockets because I don't like giving myself anything that could be incriminating. And one of the policemen actually holding his hand out of my face, which I think says a lot, really. It was, you know, honestly, I'd love to say that I could understand what he was saying, but it was mostly just mumbling. Something about Sharia law, something about her not being British. There was only so much I picked up, really.
Right, so the sort of bog standard National Front stuff, right? And then this woman, Jess Phillips, MP, tweets, who looks like they have the power here, the real Brummie on the left, i.e. USAF, or the EDL who migrated for the day to our city and failed to assimilate. It's such a brilliant tweet. And it kind of encapsulates what everyone thinks about that photo, right? And now you are internationally famous and being celebrated far and wide.
Yeah, very unintentionally. That wasn't my goal in any of this. I think it was just instinct at that point that was kicking in. But yeah, that was a big deal. I've had quite, I'll be honest though, the best responses have been from people that have got in touch with me and told me their own personal stories and how it's affected. I've had a lot of stories about daughters being infected and seeing me as a role model now, which I really never expected to happen. But I've had some really, really amazing responses, including Piers Morgan and Jess Phillips as well.
And what are people saying to you? What is it that resonates with them, do you think?
I think one of the key things that I identified why this picture has been so influential compared to other pictures which are very, very much like it is that often we see in these situations militant anti-fascists who'll be in black bloc, which is kind of balaclavas, all black gear. And it might be the exact same situation. It might be the exact same level of aggression kind of dynamics as well between the two parties. But it's difficult for people to see, to understand that you can still have that even with black bloc. But I think when you see a face and you see that it's a girl and you see things like that, everything starts to make more sense. People can identify with it as well.
Yeah. I wonder if it's an optimistic image in the context of the kind of angry world we live in, right? Because he is so angry and you look so unfazed by it. I mean, you look completely transcendently untroubled. And that's a very powerful message to send in the face of rage, isn't it?
I think, yeah. With the trying to stay calm thing, that wasn't to provoke them, I think, and I don't think the smile was to provoke them either. I think that was my response, because sometimes if you're trying to calm yourself, make sure you stay in the kind of right frame of mind to be having discussions and things like that, and you're in the right frame of mind that you don't do anything that could incriminate you for any reason or suggest that you've done something criminal. Sometimes things like that just come through. So if I'm standing there smiling, I think it was just me just trying to stay calm and collected, and that's as far as it went, yeah.
Sophia Khan, fantastic photos that have gone far and wide in the, 24 hours or so since that happened. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ, 30 seconds before 6 o'clock. After the news, Jeff Murphy on John Clark. Very moving interview as Jeff Murphy takes stock on everything that's happened since they first met. We have more from Edge, Kim and rugby, the Super 18 is not going to be the Super 18 any longer. Remember, it started in 1996 as the Super 12. Super 12, Katrina Batten. Yep. And it's got too big for its own good. So they are downsizing all of that and more after KB with the news.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening, ko Katrina Batten aho. A jury in the High Court in Wellington has thrown out all claims made by Lani Hageman that the Labour leader Andrew Little defamed her, but it was not so clear-cut about comments Mr Little made about Earl Hageman. Mr Little has been sued by the Hagemans, the owners of the Scenic Hotel Group, over statements he made linking a resort deal awarded to their company with a large donation they made to the National Party. The jury found one of Mr Little's statements about Mr Hageman was defamatory, but was unable to decide if he was able to make these comments because he's a politician and protected by qualified privilege. So the jury did not consider the damages. Lani Hageman spoke to reporters outside the court, saying she'll consider whether or not to carry on the legal fight.
I came to this court to restore my husband's reputation, which was damaged by Andrew Little's actions. Possibly the jury has found it difficult to deal with the technicalities of defamation law, even though Andrew Little has recently apologised and offered compensation, all of which, in my view, took far too long to be offered.
Lani Hageman. Edgecombe residents returning to their homes tomorrow are being promised they'll be given plenty of warning if the town needs to be evacuated again due to bad weather. More heavy rain is forecast to hit the region later this week. The Mayor of Whakatane, Tony Bon, says a plan is in place to ensure the several hundred residents returning tomorrow morning won't be caught out again.
If there's any concerns when they go in, they'll be told, and we'll have an evacuation plan if they need to leave. So they'll be told to leave in plenty of time.
Tony Bon says tomorrow's return covers about 130 homes on College Road north of Rata Avenue. Water, power and wastewater are due to be switched on there. Residents will be able to enter from West Bank Road. This morning, residents of 45 properties on the east side of the Rangitaiki River were able to return home. The Whakatane District Council says it will open further areas as soon as it can. Building inspectors will begin full checks tomorrow to determine which houses can be repaired and which can't. Meanwhile, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council is commissioning an independent review of events leading up to the Edgecombe flooding. The council's chair, Doug Leader, says the inquiry will be headed up by Sir Michael Cullen. Mr Leader says the terms of reference are still to be set and the other panel members are still to be appointed. However, he hopes the review panel will be able to report back by the end of July. Australian television and radio writer Ross Stevenson, who co-wrote The Games with John Clark, has paid tribute to the 68-year-old satirist and comedian. Clark was hiking in Victoria when he died of natural causes yesterday. Ross Stevenson says the sheer output of quality work showed Clark, who became known in New Zealand in the 1970s for his role as Farmer Fred Dagg, was one of the finest satirists in the English language.
He had a mind like no other and a commitment to social change and social issues like no other, and he maintained the rage, and he never lost any of that with the passing of time, and 68's way too young.
Australian writer and the late John Clark's friend Ross Stevenson. People in parts of New Caledonia have been ordered to stay inside as Cyclone Cook bears down on the territory's main island. Cook is forecast to remain a Category 3 cyclone, but the authorities warn it's still a serious threat to the islands. RNZ International's Sally Round reports.
Strong winds and rain started lashing parts of Grande Terre and the Loyalty Islands this morning, downing power lines in some places. Most areas are expected to be under a Level 2 alert by early evening, meaning people must take shelter and stop moving about. Flights have been cancelled and the authorities have warned people to prepare while they can. Météo France expects the cyclone to pass 50 kilometres to the southwest of the capital Nouméa by the morning. Winds of up to 200 kilometres an hour are expected, as well as very heavy rain and waves of up to 10 metres. This is Sally Round.
Public health officials in Auckland say the typhoid outbreak appears to have plateaued. No new cases have been confirmed in the last 4 days. So far, there have been 18 cases, 1 probable case and 1 under investigation, all connected to the same church in Auckland. 1 person remains in hospital and another patient has been discharged in the last 24 hours. It's 6:05. To sport, and the Spanish golfer Sergio Garcia once believed he wasn't good enough to win a major. But he's dispelled that belief by winning his maiden major title at the US Masters in Augusta after a playoff win over Englishman Justin Rose. Garcia developed a reputation for struggling in the big moments, with one of his most heartbreaking losses coming in 2007 when his putt to win the British Open spun out of the cup. Garcia says today's win, on the day his idol, the late Seve Ballesteros, would have turned 60, is a dream come true.
To do it on his 60th birthday and to join him and Olazabal, my 2 idols in golf my whole life, it's something amazing.
Sergio Garcia. The Western Force or Melbourne Rebels will be axed from Super Rugby for next season as the Australian Rugby Union reduces its teams from 5 to 4. The decision over which team will be culled will be announced within the next 3 days. The Western Force seemed the most likely to go, despite a heartfelt plea from Captain Matt Hodgson.
Being a parent myself, you don't know where to put your kid now. Like, do I put him in rugby or do I put him in to stay in Western Australia playing AFL? So it's frustrating. For kids to turn up here, it's great, but now they don't know if Western Force is going to be their future.
Western Force captain Matt Hodgson. Oklahoma City's Russell Westbrook has broken a 56-year-old NBA record with his 42nd triple-double of the season. Westbrook scored 50 points, took 15 rebounds and 10 assists, nailing a buzzer-beating three-pointer for a 106-105 win over Denver. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Angela McShane discusses London's dysfunctional relationship with gin. In the 18th century, it had thousands of gin joints, and they weren't washing it down with tonic either. We have a window on the world of sex tourism in Myanmar, while our botanist Beck Stanley introduces us to the world of endophytes, the life forms that hang out inside plants, on Nights with me, Brian Crump, from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow now. Northland to Taranaki, cloudy periods with isolated showers. Showers becoming more frequent later tomorrow about Northland and Auckland, especially in the east. Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupo, a few showers turning to rain tomorrow evening. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few showers, mainly north of Napier, otherwise mainly fine. Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa, fine today, becoming cloudy tomorrow with a few spots of evening rain from Kapiti southwards. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine today, cloud increasing tomorrow and scattered rain developing. Bulletu for Fiordland, occasional rain south of Hokitika today, otherwise fine. Rain spreading elsewhere tomorrow with some heavy falls possible at night. Otago and Southland, high cloud increasing today and scattered light rain developing. The Chatham Islands mostly cloudy with the odd shower. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint with JC.
Thanks very much, KB. It's lovely to have you with us, everyone, no matter how you are joining us, whether it is on Sky 83, Freeview 50 or old school styles on the wireless. Thank you for being there. John Clark, who gave us Fred Dagg and more, and who gave the Australians a more nuanced satire and held mirrors up to both nations and said, look, you silly buggers, this is how you are, has died. He was 68, working brilliantly with Brian Dawes, still exposing the Australian establishment at all its absurdities and pomposities and confusion. His death was, in short, a terrible shock. And for those who go back much of a lifetime with him, a terrible loss too. John Clark was giving us Fred Dagg in the 70s, a turning point in New Zealand television and New Zealand culture. Something was happening on screen in New Zealand then, out of the blue or green or both. At exactly the same time, Jeff Murphy was making Sleeping Dogs, a turning point in New Zealand cinema. He and John Clark would go on to work together. Jeff was deeply shocked when he heard the news, remembering a lifetime ago now when they were young and daring and full of the hope of something new.
I don't know, I just met him around Wellington, in the pub and that,
And what do you remember of him?
I remember him as being extraordinarily droll. Yeah, no, he was hell of funny. Yeah, we did. I did Dag Day Afternoon with him.
Which was almost, I remember that from the time. God, when was that? Was that the 70s or the 80s?
That was it was the same time as well, man. It was the 70s.
And you just made it up as you went along, did you boys?
Well, just about. I mean, John Clark was meant to write the script, but he never did, you know. So we just sort of boxed on as best we could.
And if you didn't really have a script, how did it work for you as the director?
Well, we would sort of, we had themes, you know. We knew that he was travelling to Auckland trying to find the bionic ram.
That's right, the $6 million ram.
Yeah. And so, you know, there were certain incidents that happened on the way as he asked people about it and all that sort of thing. So we would sort of get a scene together with an actor, whoever it was, and then we would talk it through, and then after about a quarter of an hour, we'd say, okay, let's have a lash at it.
Was there anything written down?
Not that I can recall.
And he was a famous extemporizer, wasn't he? So even if you had a vague sense of what he was going to say, he always said something different or something more.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, he'd take you by surprise all the time.
It was authentic and original and audacious, wasn't it, what he did? Because, I mean, there's a great tradition in New Zealand of comedy that we underestimate and forget, and that is Māori comedy and the particular and unique Māori take on the world. But Pākehā comedy was almost conspicuous by its absence, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was by far the funniest comic of the time.
Yeah.
You couldn't do Dag Day Afternoon today. You just couldn't do it. You know, they wouldn't let you. You know?
Well, I'd like to see you go to the Film Commission for funding on that one. Where's your script? Haven't got one. What's it about? Not quite sure yet. A bionic ram, but we'll make the rest of it up.
Yeah.
You're right. It wouldn't happen, would it?
No. The thing was that it was John Barnett financed it from contra deals.
Bloody old Barney, he can swing a deal, can't he?
Yeah. We'll use your tractor and we'll give it a full screen credit of it somewhere in the picture.
And you did?
Yeah, and you give us some money, you know, and that's how he put it together. I mean, we shot it in 6 days, you know, travelling from Wellington to Auckland at the same time and writing the script wherever we could, and, you know. So it was extremely fast, very hard work. But there's some great moments. I mean, I think the opening sequence of it was one of the best I've ever shot, which was John Clark chopping firewood. And it's to the tune of, 2001.
Yeah, Kubrick, yes, yeah. God, do you know I remember that? I haven't seen it since I was a youngster.
Yeah, because he'd chop the firewood and the firewood would fly up in the air, and it was like the apes, the scene with the apes.
It was his brilliance to make stuff like that work, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he did. He made it work really well. Yeah, well, I think they've lost a great one.
Jeff Murphy, talking about John Clark, and I'm sure how upset and sad and shocked Jeff is reflects the feelings of everyone who ever worked with John Clark and knew him or watched him or listened to him. Jeff talked about John Barnett doing contra deals to pay for that movie, and John Barnett was also responsible for giving us that footage which he owned the copyright on. Thanks, John. It's 14 minutes past 6. The jury has thrown out all claims made by Lani Hageman that the Labour leader Andrew Little defamed her. Mr Little has been sued by Lani and Earl Hageman, the owners of the Scenic Hotel Group, over statements he made linking a resort deal awarded to their company with a large donation they made to the National Party. But there was a mix of findings in relation to comments Mr Little made about Earl Hageman. The jury found one of Mr Little's statements about Mr Hageman was defamatory, but was then unable to decide if he was able to make those comments because he's a politician and protected by qualified privilege. Lani Hageman spoke to reporters outside the High Court in Wellington, where she said she would consider whether or not to go back to court.
We came here today with the full intention of restoring Earl's good reputation, our family name, and Scenic Hotel Group's good standing in the hospitality and tourism sector. We have achieved that. We can take at least this from the jury's verdict. There was a finding of an item which was defamatory of Earl.
It's Lani Hageman. The case will come back to the court at a later date to consider what will happen with the courses of action the jury could not agree on. Former Finance Minister Sir Michael Cullen will head a review of the events that led to the flooding at Edgecombe amid growing anger over the authorities' handling of the emergency. The announcement comes as residents whose homes escaped the flooding were allowed to move back today. Others with flood-damaged houses were escorted back for 15 minutes to collect some possessions. Sharon Brett-Kelly reports.
Shane and Christy Lowe say they may never see their Rata Street home again.
There's concrete wall that's gone through properties, there's the tar seals come up off the road in some places. You can see where water has dragged bits of tree and bush and stuff and pushed it around fence posts. Yeah, it's quite a mess.
They got a glimpse of the damage this morning and came tantalisingly close to going inside, but were stopped just metres away. The couple say they got through 3 cordons with an escort before they were told to go no further because it is unsafe.
The street is inaccessible and contaminated, then even though we can access it from that Rata Street place, we're still not allowed to go there. And because it's still in that mega red zone, or whatever the technical term is, I just don't think we're going to see any of it ever again.
The Lows, who have a disabled baby, say they just want to get home to retrieve a few precious things. They worry more forecast heavy rain this week will further delay their return.
Trying to access the little bits that we can, because, you know, we've got nothing.
I found a plastic spoon in the car for my baby, for his food, and I was over the moon. Ah, familiar object, an ugly plastic spoon.
Like other residents, the Lows are frustrated with the district and regional council's poor communication since the town was evacuated last Thursday. As they face months without a home, they say no one has been able to tell them about long-term accommodation options. Meanwhile, a marae in Kawerau's been supplying those displaced by the floods with food, clothing and support. Rotahi Marae's had a core of volunteers helping since Edgecombe was evacuated. Its spokesman, Te Waraki Teruki, says only a few families have been staying overnight.
People have been coming and going. I think nearly every day they've been registering around about over 100 families every day. They've been receiving food packs, essential petrol vouchers.
As anger and frustration grows over the handling of the emergency, Bay of Plenty Regional Council this afternoon announced an independent review. A group headed by Sir Michael Cullen will look at the infrastructure and circumstances that led to the breach of a stop bank and flooding through the town last week. The chair, Doug Leader, says people are looking for answers. They want to know how it could happen and what could have been done to prevent it.
We need to be able to ensure the community that this review will be independent, that it will look at all issues leading up to the adverse event, what lessons we can learn from it, and hopefully my expectation is that review will be completed by the end of July.
Meanwhile, building inspectors will start doing full checks of houses to determine whether people will be able to live in their homes again. Mō te hotaka o te ahi, ko Sharon Brett-Kelly aho.
In Kawerau, the Rotahi Marae has become a welfare centre for those displaced by the floods. 473 people have registered for help at the marae, where council officials, medical staff, wind staff have been based since last Thursday. Our reporter Zach Fleming visited today and spoke with marae coordinator Hannah Edwardson.
It's very cool. It's very much a whānau atmosphere here. Pretty much when you come in the gate you get a hug and then you tell us your story and then we help you wherever we can. We also offer whānaus food parcels because most whānaus are actually staying with whānau or friend in Kawerau. So what we do is we say, great, that's awesome, you're getting that support at home. Here's some food to take home and share just to take that financial pressure off until we can get you on your wins and stuff like that sorted out. So that's really cool.
Those stories that people tell you after you give them a big hug that they probably need, what are they telling you?
It's been really really cool. We see people come in and they're kind of a bit hollow, I suppose, and they're just needing some help, and we help them where we can, and then you see that glimmer of hope and that, okay, it's going to be okay. The stories about I was standing at my door and I saw the water and then they see the river break and the bank break, sorry, and then they see the water coming to them. They're like, oh, this is really serious. We need to get out. One lady, she made me laugh. She said, the first thing I grabbed was my makeup. She said, of all the things to grab, my makeup. And she, it's 2 days down the track and she's like, I could have grabbed so many other things, but makeup was on my top of my priority list. So, people just figuring out what they needed to take and having those grab bags, as Civil Defence recommends, would have been great. Yeah. Makeup could have been in there.
How long are you expecting you're going to have to keep this open for to kind of help people out with things that they need? Because these aren't wants, these are definitely needs.
These are definitely needs. So we're definitely here till Wednesday. We've talked to Civil Defence and Whakatane because we are a support welfare centre. So we're here definitely till Wednesday afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon we're hoping to reassess and just gauge how our whānaus are starting to settle in. And as they start to open more and more areas in Edgecombe, we're able to see some families being able to go back to their houses. There's still that main area that's probably going to be a bit longer, but we'll wait to hear from Regional Council on those decisions and we'll assess from there. But at the moment we're still here. Yeah. We had our singers here last night entertaining us for dinner, so it's a nice atmosphere.
Marae Coordinator Hannah Edwardson. Zach also spoke with registered nurse Peta Ruha, who's also been helping out at the marae.
So we've seen a lot of whānau come through. We've triaged 140 over the last 5 days who have presented with significant trauma. Ultimately, the ones we saw on Thursday evening, Friday and Saturday, all been in shock. And so we've been providing them with an opportunity to just have a space where they can talk about some of the key issues and accessing the appropriate support that they need.
In your opinion, do you think it's going to take quite a while for that kind of shock and perhaps even like PTSD even to go away?
In the first 5 days, it's critical that we provide that immediate support in terms of attending to all the medical issues that are presenting. I think over the next couple of days, in particular the next 10 days while whānau are being escorted in to see their properties, what we're going to see is a lot of the trauma presenting itself then. And whānau will be needing to talk to people about what they've lost, the grief and the loss. And then I think that we're going to see another wave of needing to support whānau around the trauma during and after the clean-up.
That's Zach Fleming speaking to registered nurse Peta Ruha, who's been helping out at the marae. It's coming up to 23 minutes past 6. We're just going to return now to the verdicts in the Andrew Little defamation case. Andrew Little spoke to reporters a short time ago at Parliament. Here's some of what he had to say.
Obviously, I respect the decision of the court and in particular the jury. They've had 2 very long days, I think, to get to their decisions. I'm very pleased that no damages have been awarded. And that the qualified privilege that the judge ruled that I had has not been displaced as a result of the jury's findings. The disappointment is that we spent 6 days in the High Court and not a lot has changed, and certainly I stand by the efforts I made to resolve this issue without it having to go to court.
Andrew Little talking a short time ago. Some sport now, with the time coming up to 24 minutes past 6. Either Perth's Western Force Well, the Melbourne Rebels are set to get the chop from the Super Rugby competition next year. Remember, it started off with 12 teams in '96, went up to 15, now 18. The competition's governing body, SANZAR, revealed yesterday that the competition will reduce from 18 back to 15, with 2 dropped from South Africa and 1 team from Australia. New Zealand has 5 teams and is keeping them. Today, the Australian newspaper announced it was the Force and Rebels who are on the chopping block, as our sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
The decision to cull either the Perth-based Western Force or the Melbourne Rebels will be made within the next 3 days. But the former Wallaby, Michael Liner, has told Sky TV it's a fait accompli that the Force will go.
Disappointing for the Force. You know, they've been there much longer than the Rebels, but the Rebels I don't think were ever on the table to be cut because they are privately funded. And the Force have been there for a long time, but they've never really sort of been that competitive, unfortunately.
The chairman of the Australian Rugby Union, Cameron Klein, concedes the 18-team format was doomed from the outset.
I acknowledge that that was a mistake, right? That competition has not delivered the outcomes we wanted. I'm not, however, convinced that it's the 18-team competition that has led us to losing a team today. There are underlying financial trends that are problematic for sport, right, that really I think would have got us to the same position anyway, where Australia, from a financial perspective and a high-performance perspective, can only afford 4 teams.
While the writing appears to be on the wall for the Force, the side's captain, Matt Hodgson, has made a tearful plea on behalf of the team. The 35-year-old Hodgson has been part of the Force since its inception in 2006, and he says axing it would spell the death of rugby in Western Australia.
Being a parent myself, you don't know where to put your kid now. Like, do I put him in rugby or do I put him in to stay in Western Australia playing AFL? So it's frustrating. For kids to turn up here, it's great, but now they don't know if Western Force is going to be their future.
Whether it's the Force or the Rebels that gets the chop, the Australian Rugby Union's chief executive, Bill Pulver, concedes it'll leave a lot of players out of work.
20% of the professional playing population in the elite men's 15 side will go. Every single player contract will be honoured. So there'll be an individual discussion with each player in relation to the high performance requirements of the Super Rugby teams and the Australian Rugby Union to resolve that.
The decision over which South African teams won't make the grade will take longer, with South African Rugby only just beginning consultation with its 6 teams. The South African Rugby Chief Executive, Jury Roo, says a reduction in the number of teams is a bitter pill to swallow. The large number of South Africans now playing overseas has hastened the decision. The ailing South African economy has led to hundreds of top-flight South African players heading to Europe, with Roo estimating up to 6 Super Rugby squads worth of South African players are now overseas. Last year, 313 South Africans played for leading overseas clubs. That's up from 257 in 2015. While New Zealand retains its 5 franchises, the revamp could yet have major financial implications for rugby here, depending on the renegotiation of broadcasting rights for the competition and just how appealing the return to the 15-team format is to international broadcasters. For Checkpoint, Stephen Hewson.
We're going to end tonight in Sweden, where police say the main suspect in the fatal truck attack in Stockholm on Friday had been refused permanent residence and had shown sympathy with Islamic State. 4 people were killed when that truck was driven into crowds of shoppers. The BBC's Dan Johnson has this report.
Talented, compassionate and caring. Chris Bevington, in the words of his father. He chose to marry and call Sweden home. He had young children here and worked for the music company Spotify. He was here in Stockholm's crowded shopping streets on Friday afternoon when a hijacked truck was turned into a weapon. A Belgian and 2 Swedish citizens were also killed in the attack. Today, investigators revealed more about the man they think was at the wheel. We know the suspect showed sympathies for extremist organisations, says the police chief, among them Islamic State. He's a 39-year-old from Uzbekistan, though he hasn't officially been named. He was on the security service's radar, though they say he was a marginal figure. His application to stay in Sweden was turned down last summer, and the police were looking for him because he'd avoided being deported. The truck ended up smashed against the department store window. People have kept coming here to write messages of hope and defiance on the boards, and there have been more tributes to the victims too. Just yards away, a vigil, a chance to share feelings and try to make sense of them. Sadness, anger and fear of what might happen next.
Quite emotional. I'm very sad and very angry, but at the same time it's so wonderful, like how people come together, and yeah.
We stand here in solidarity, not just with those like in Stockholm, but around the world, with everyone who needs to just feel the love and that we are together in this and we are not afraid.
There's pride too in the response so far. Spontaneous applause for Stockholm's police officers and a challenge to those who threaten the way of life here.
If we become scared, then we play their hand, and I think this is a good picture of how Sweden reacted.
This was a display of multiculturalism, of kindness and tolerance. Things people recognise could now face a threat.
That report from the BBC ending Checkpoint for tonight. Thank you for being with us. We will be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Labour leader Andrew Little has been cleared of defaming the part owner of the Scenic Hotel Group, Lani Hageman. People in Edgecombe are being promised they'll be given plenty of warning if they need to be evacuated again, with more heavy rain forecast to hit later this week. Friends and colleagues on both sides of the Tasman are paying tribute to the comedian and satirist John Clark, who's died suddenly. And public health officials say the typhoid outbreak in Auckland appears to have plateaued, with no new cases confirmed in the last 4 days. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Whether you want to listen live or anytime, you'll find audio on demand from your favourite programs, interviews, music and bulletins at rnz.co.nz. You can save and download the best bits for later using your playlist. Plus, feature articles